Bonjour à toutes et à tous. Je vais me présenter d'abord. Je suis Marion Moreau. Je suis journaliste chez frenchweb.fr, qui est un magazine des professionnels du net. On s'intéresse, nous, depuis 3 ans maintenant, à tout ce qui se fait de mieux, évidemment, dans l'économie numérique. On est assez proche, en général, des écosystèmes, des startups, des entreprises, des IT en général. Et on est venu notamment à Bordeaux de Paris pour voir ce qui se fait dans le numérique à Bordeaux. On a passé déjà une journée hier à faire des reportages, des interviews. On est très content d'être ici. Et puis, ce matin, on va s'intéresser évidemment, avec vous, à ce thème sur la Grande Jonction, de la diversité que peuvent apporter les villes sur l'économie numérique. Comment finalement développer l'économie numérique, la croissance par le numérique, avec l'implication des collectivités, des villes, des différents acteurs. Ce matin, on va voyager. Je vous propose de voyager un petit peu en Europe. On va commencer par s'intéresser au festival, parce que finalement, il y a plusieurs façons, quand on cherche un petit peu, de développer le tissu économique local par le numérique, et notamment par les festivals. On va recevoir 2 personnes qui ont fait le déplacement de relativement loin, d'Angleterre et puis d'Amsterdam. Ils vont nous expliquer comment, finalement, avec leurs petites mains, ils ont créé de véritables, allez, soyons fous, success stories, dans le domaine de l'organisation des festivals numériques. Donc on va discuter de tout cela avec eux. On abordera ensuite les Living Labs. On va rappeler évidemment ce qu'est les Living Labs, qui existent déjà depuis de nombreuses années, mais c'est un concept qui s'est élargi parce que les implications, les acteurs sont différents aujourd'hui, le périmètre a changé. Il est très intéressant de voir comment cela se développe en France, puisqu'il y en a déjà beaucoup, et puis en dehors des frontières en Europe. Et enfin, ensuite, on a le plaisir de recevoir un élu du quartier est de Londres, d'Hackney, qui s'appelle Guy Nicholson. On sera ravis évidemment de l'accueillir. Lui aussi a fait le déplacement. Donc lui, là maintenant, on va voyager un petit peu en Angleterre et puis s'intéresser à la façon dont un quartier a complètement réussi sa transformation au lendemain des Jeux Olympiques. Comment finalement se servir d'un événement pour vraiment être un levier et puis choisir, faire le pari de monter un cluster avec les acteurs locaux. On verra, vous le verrez tout à l'heure, il y a des exemples extrêmement intéressants finalement de monter en puissance sur l'aspect social, mais pas seulement. Et puis enfin, on voyagera toujours encore, cette fois-ci avec Vincent Prétet qui est bordelais, et qui viendra nous donner vraiment le fruit de ses recherches sur l'écosystème entrepreneurial. Comment est-ce qu'on réussit finalement à créer un écosystème qui soit efficace, à attirer les investisseurs. Qui sont ces nouveaux investisseurs? On sait aujourd'hui que les investisseurs ont des visages différents, des profils différents. On va essayer de percer ces mystères-là et puis de voir avec lui, de par le monde, quels sont ces écosystèmes. Alors on va commencer sur les festivals. Je vous propose tout de suite d'accueillir sur scène deux justement personnalités des festivals en Europe. J'ai le plaisir d'accueillir mademoiselle Kitty Leering, qui est manager, directrice du programme de Picnic Festival Amsterdam. Bienvenue Kitty sur scène. On peut l'applaudir. Et puis également Herb Kim, qui a fait le déplacement. Bienvenue sur scène, Herb. Herb Kim, qui est, vous le verrez, quasi un entrepreneur lui aussi, qui nous vient de Gateshead, dans le nord de l'Angleterre, et qui a lancé un festival sur l'Angleterre qui marche très très bien, qui a beaucoup de succès. Alors justement, Herb, j'ai envie de commencer avec vous, in English. J'espère que ça ne dérangera personne. D'ailleurs, on va un peu, comme je vous le disais, voyager et puis changer de langue de temps en temps, mais je suis sûre qu'on va tous se comprendre là-dessus. Herb, hello, welcome in France, in Bordeaux. Hope you're doing well, actually. So
This works great.
just to make a little brief about you. You're English, but you have traveled a lot, and you used to live in New York, but you choose just to come in the UK, and to develop the Thinking Festival, which is the name of the huge festival you organize actually now. Tell us more about you.
Okay, sure. I'll cover it in my presentation. I'll skip that bit now. So my parents are Korean. but I was born in Brooklyn, New York. So I am American, I have to admit. I came to the UK in 1997. And the very short story is because of a woman. So I'll leave it at that. There's more detail, but we don't have much time. So.
Okay.
Yeah. So and then through a series of happy accidents. I'll skip through this bit of my presentation. But I was working for the mobile phone operator O2, and I was actually almost about to take a job with Orange, with France Telecom, and my best friend at O2 convinced me to look at a job that was based in Newcastle upon Tyne and Gateshead, and that would become Thinking Digital would result as a part of that. And the full name is actually the Thinking Digital Conference, although it's become a kind of festival-like thing.
So when you think about Thinking Digital, what was the very real beginning of the project?
Right. Okay. Well. So, I mean, really what happened was that we had a company crisis, and the company that was employing me at the time was called Codeworks, and we were a state-funded venture to try and help develop and support the digital industries of Newcastle and the northeast of England generally, and basically what ended up happening is our primary funding body. The entire senior management of it all changed, the board, the CEO, the whole group. And the new management came in, and they had very different ideas. And one of those ideas was to try and kill Codeworks, which of course the company that employed me. And so we survived that, but we had to come up with a big idea fast. And there's a long story to that, but eventually Thinking Digital was a result of that.
Herb, what were exactly the big risk to build such a festival? What were eventually the barriers?
I think the biggest risk for us was just that Newcastle upon Tyne / Gateshead, they're not the places that you would think about putting a Thinking Digital-like conference there. It's very much, if you will, a second-tier city in the UK, and one that's reputation, at least in the UK, is more about struggle, about trying to regenerate from a very industrial past. It was known for coal, it was known for shipbuilding, it was known for steel, and of course all those industries had long since left to other parts of the world, as I think most people will know. And so it was really as much in the face of that reality, the sort of this Rust Belt mentality, that we had to figure out how do we credibly put on something of the level of ambition that we wanted to. And that was really the biggest barrier. Practical ones as well, which is that in London, for putting on something like we did and charging a significant fee is normal. In Newcastle, many events are free or near free. And so to put on something of this scale and have it be financially sustainable was a big challenge for us.
Okay, maybe we can see a few slides to show what the Thinking Festival is.
All right, cool. Is it okay if I stand and go through these really quickly? Yeah. You can point at me if I'm running out of time. Okay.
You can go if you want.
Is that right? Okay, cool. All right. So I'm going to just first of all, thank you everyone for coming, and thanks very much to Antoine and to everyone for organizing this. This is really cool. And you have what a beautiful city you have. I actually was here about 15 years ago, and things are greatly different in that time, let's say. So well done to all those involved. Right, I'm gonna. Oh, it works. Fantastic. Oh, you're welcome. Right, so as I mentioned, I'm from New York. I came to, actually, my first city in England was Oxford in 1997. We worked for a company called Blackwell's. My last job, as I mentioned, was O2, and nearly went to Orange. And then instead took this job up in the northeast of England. This is our iconic statue in the northeast of England called the Angel of the North. And let's see, and I mentioned before that we had this interesting change which led to Thinking Digital, which is that the political environment that supported our venture changed quite dramatically, and we had to think fast. And as I mentioned, there was an initial attempt to try and shut down the company immediately, but what they did instead was much more intelligent, was to simply bleed us to death over time by cutting our funding and taking money away and setting up all kinds of challenging targets that we would have no hope in meeting. And so in search of trying to find a solution to all this, I came across a book called Good to Great by Jim Collins. If you've been to business school or anywhere near it, you'll have been subjected to this. Actually, very, very good book. And basically, the book is about simplification. It's about trying to find what it is that you're good about, what it is that you're really world-class at, what are you really good at, what are you passionate about, and then to try and figure out a business model that can wrap those two things in and make you very different. It's a great book. And so I knew what we were good at. We were actually very good at doing events and conferences, and I knew this for a variety of reasons. I knew we were passionate about, which was in the digital media and the digital technology space. But I didn't know was what was this going to be, this savior economic model. And I happened to come across something called the TED Conference, picking up an issue of The Guardian, which at the time I didn't ever read, but just had my chance. So I learned about TED, and I found a way to get into the TED Conference back in 2006. And so in addition for it being an inspiring a few days, I also figured out that they were making a tremendous amount of money in this short period of time. I figured it was something close to maybe $10 million in profit, which is just phenomenal for a conference. I mean, most conferences at best break even. And so I had the idea as to what and thinking digital. This was before there was all the TEDx stuff now, which is these days, I'm sure some of you have been to a TEDx or at least heard of these TEDx events. This was prior to all that, and so we set up our own thing called Thinking Digital. And it really was a kind of bet the company thing, that we were going to just bet everything and go big with this huge idea that we had. And like TED, we went and scoured the world looking for some of the world's best speakers in a variety of fields. This is a picture of some of our speakers here. We were lucky that we had a brand new venue. This is the Sage Gateshead, which at the time was just 4 years old, and an absolutely world-class inside and out, designed by Sir Norman Foster. And I took out my old business school textbooks and I went up and down the list of every possible marketing activity we could possibly do. New website, a blog, print ads, online ads, so on and so forth, sort of thing. And we really pulled the boat out, pushed the boat out, I should say. And I'd love to say, though, that with this huge investment and all this effort and all this money that we invested, that Thinking Digital was a huge success from day one. But the reality was, in reality, is that despite all this investment, we were really, really struggling. And as an example of that, I think 6 weeks prior to our conference, we had a hall that held 375 people, and we only had about 150 people registered to come. Right, so and so we were really instead of all this good to great and TED conference stuff, we were really looking to just survive and frankly not be embarrassed, to just simply save face is the reality. I don't know if you've seen the movie Jerry Maguire, but it's one of my favorite movies. And there's a quote, there's a bit in the movie. He says, "My life is an up at dawn, pride-swallowing siege that I will never fully tell you about." And that was exactly what my life was like at this time, to try and figure out how we're going to fill this rather large space with people in a way that would actually be not a complete financial disaster. So we get there in the end through a lot of begging and borrowing and stealing that I won't fully tell you about. But the attendance is what I would call really face saving. But it's just enough that it's not a humiliation. So we get there in the end. It is a financial, not a disaster, but pretty close to a disaster. Certainly it was disastrous in all sorts of different ways. But we survive, and I don't get fired. So we roll the dice for 2009, a year later. And we launched the conference in September of 2008. And 2 weeks later, Lehman Brothers collapses. Yeah. So this is the beginning of the financial crisis. And the thing that impacted us on was that our two major sponsors from the year before tell us they're not going to come back, right? They're not going to sponsor. They're not going to send anyone. And so we thought, wow, it can't get any worse. And then we realized, wow, it could actually get worse. And so we were busy tooling up to try and figure out how we were going to get ourselves out of this mess. And in about November, December that year, a remarkable thing happened. We started to sell tickets in large volumes, and we didn't actually know what was happening because we weren't at this point doing any active marketing. We had a website. We were obviously telling people about that the conference existed, and so on and so forth. But we weren't actually doing all this marketing that we had planned. That was supposed to happen in February, March, before the May conference. And by the end of it, so we ended up having to not spend all this money in marketing. And our results for 2009 become dramatically improved. We nearly break even that year. The numbers are great, and so on and so forth. So I think the question really is what ended up happening. So I mentioned that there were all these negatives that happened in 2008. The positive thing was that the people who did come really liked what we did. And where that converted into was that 2008 was the beginning of what's now relatively commonplace, the social media revolution. And we kind of basically got lucky in 3 areas: in blogs, online video, and in Twitter. And where we got lucky was that we happened to have one of the UK's best-known tech bloggers in the audience in 2008, and he wrote something incredibly nice about the conference experience that he had. Sky News came and did a video about the conference, which was a complete surprise to us. We had invited them, but we didn't know until the day that they were actually going to be coming. And the reason that's a bit of luck for us is because by 2008, literally that year, Sky started to post all their videos onto the internet, which now meant that I actually had something I could refer to quite easily to people in terms of our marketing. But the big thing was in Twitter. And what happened in 2008, 2009, not surprising, Google was our #1 referring website. Sorry if I'm blocking people over here. And it still is our #1 referring website today. But if you look at what happened in our traffic from 2008 to 2009 on Twitter, it goes up by a factor of 7, right? And so unbeknownst to us, there was this huge word of mouth thing happening for us that really helped to drive a huge amount of our traffic and led us to kind of the modern day of what we call thinking digital. 2010, 2011, the positive news continues. I won't go into too much detail here. And then by 2012, we get these wonderful write-ups. This is the Next Web that calls their review of the 2012 conference. They call us the UK's answer to TED. So some of my original visions being, and of course, we never go around saying we're TED. We jokingly call ourselves the Geordie TED, which is it's an inside joke in the UK. The Metro newspaper, which is a really big free paper in London, did this wonderful 2-page write-up of us. And to some extent, we've sort of returned the favor to TED. We run 5 TEDx events throughout Northern England that are all doing really, really great and super successful and all this sort of good stuff. And that's my little story. Sorry if I've taken up too much time. Great.
Thank you, Herb.
You're welcome.
That's clear, isn't it? Thank you. Herb, just the questions I would like just you to answer. It seems what is interesting in thinking digital festival is that the council involvement, because that's what was the conditions of success by considering the festival, isn't it?
Yeah, it's interesting because I mentioned that the original funder was actually a regional development body called One North East, and do credit to them for providing some of the funds. Although I have to be honest with you, they didn't actually know that they were funding a conference. They gave us a kind of open package of money, and it was kind of up to us to kind of do what we wanted with it, right? But then I mentioned that they came and they started to basically cut the funding that they were giving us. And that's actually where Gateshead Council in particular started to fill the gap, because they were very excited by this idea. And they were like, oh, we really want to see this sort of take off. And so very quietly, they gave us a bit of money, but they would do things like free premises, and they would find other ways to kind of pull in favors to kind of make sure that the conference could kind of go forward. So that's really the role that they played, and it was great because it was actually very quiet. There was never a big press release. We never, they even though they have been sponsors, they always put their logo beneath everyone else, kind of thing. They want to be a supporter, but they're not looking for lots of, if you will, political capital off the back of it.
Thinking Digital Festival is one in a year. The frequency of
that's right. It's annual. That's in May. That's
and
right.
What about the next edition? The council is waiting for something particular.
I think really, I think the role that Thinking Digital has played for Gateshead and for the region generally is, I genuinely think it's been a kind of ambition setter. If when you go to TED, I think what TED does is that it kind of helps you reset what good looks like, because not just obviously the presentations, which obviously become very famous, but all the people who attend. And I think Thinking Digital has kind of served that purpose, but obviously for a more local agenda. And I think underneath that, we've then seen things like other venture capital funds come into place to support digital and things. I think people began to realize and believe, oh, maybe digital is something really we can do. This isn't just a preserve of Cambridge or London or Amsterdam or you know, wherever it might be. So this can happen here as well.
We talk about, I've heard about a digital media cluster born with the Thinking Digital Festival. What about that? Could you just explain how does it work?
Sure. Oh, right. Okay. So we have a cluster organization called Digital Union, and it basically, so if Thinking Digital is about sort of, you know, big ambition and world-class speakers and all that sort of stuff, Digital Union is a much more tactical organization that works with they have about 250 and again, there's all paying members. It's not big money, but it's about £100 a year. To work on a much more, if you will, specific things, on things like funding, things like recruiting. You know, these come. I mean, the sort of bread and butter issues that small companies need to deal with in order to kind of take the next step.
And what about London? What kind of relationship do you have with the London people? You know, over there. What is the feedback?
Yeah, I mean, it's ultimately it's split in two. So I think when we started with it, I mean, London. I don't think anyone in London considered that there might actually be something credible happening in the northeast of England, genuinely. And I think now you've got a lot of people that are kind of amazed. And so I think we actually benefit. So there's one half of the London media world that are kind of like, you know, they're sort of amazed that this sort of thing is happening in the northeast. I think the other half have probably hardened in their skepticism and their disbelief that this must be some sort of scam or some sort of, you know, this is just a kind of PR front, if you will. So yeah, so it's been interesting. You have, but it's ironic where when we get people. So you know, we've got people coming from Oklahoma this year. So you know, we get people from further field. There is less of that kind of that weird prejudice that we deal with. You know, so yeah.
Herb, last question before we talk about picnic, because time is coming out. Let's talk about the future. What about the thinking digital? Sorry. In another city, maybe in Europe?
I mean, we've talked to various people. We've consulted with it. We've helped other conferences in other places sort of take off. I mean, for me, you know, I don't want to hark too much about this TED thing, but I mean, TED actually was for a good 20 years basically unknown, other than to a small group of people, primarily in Silicon Valley. And for me, on Thinking Digital is I want to just continue to grow it, but organically. So I don't want to, I'm not looking to kind of go for world domination, if you will, and things like that. I really, its heart is very much in Gateshead, in the northeast of England. And I think it's really around continuing to spread that. We may do stuff in other places as well, but it's not the top of our list, if you will. So.
Okay. Je vous invite à poser vos questions à la fin du panel, parce que nous accueillerons aussi Stéphane Distinguin, que je n'ai pas nommé en introduction, de Cap Digital Futur en scène. Je vous propose de faire le tour d'horizon justement de ce panel festival, et vous pourrez évidemment interagir avec nos invités. Let's talk about Kitty Leering. Welcome on the stage. You're the project manager and the program manager of Picnic Festival. It takes place in Amsterdam. And another city, I think so now. You have developed another project.
Yeah, we are spreading. We are going for world. No, we're not going for world domination, but we are spreading in the world. We had a few applications from other cities that are interesting to also have a picnic. And the first experiment with that was in 2009. We had a picnic. What we call a city salon in New York, which was a bit of an ad hoc initiative, but it was a huge success. And now we are negotiating with Brazil, Mexico, and the Ukraine for a Central Eastern Europe salon, maybe.
So we would just like to know more about Picnic. Let's see what it looks like.
Okay, well, I just stay here in my seat if it is all right with you. Thank you for having me, first of all, and hi everybody. Picnic. So what is Picnic? I will go through it quickly. Is what we call a platform for social innovation and creativity. And what we try to do is to provide an environment that stimulates the development of game-changing solutions, basically, for social issues. We do this by organizing activities, and we focus always on the relation between technology and the societal challenges that we have. We were launched in 2006, and so in a sense we were going through the completely opposite process than thinking digital. We started with support from the government. So we had loads of money in the beginning.
Lucky.
We our target, yeah, I can be honest about that. So our target was to stimulate business and innovation within the Dutch creative industries and to position Amsterdam as the creative capital in Europe. And so what was the problem with these Dutch creative industries was that it was growing fast, and it became, it was growing into the biggest employer even in Amsterdam. But the thing is that the creative industries are very fragmented, so it's all very small companies, and it was very difficult for the government to reach all of them. So what they said is we need a vehicle, a platform where we can reach all of them at once. So that was basically Picnic. So as I said, the City of Amsterdam and Dutch government were founding partners. They provided subsidies. And the model was that the subsidies had to be matched by funding from the commercial parties, from the market itself. We have not only the Picnic Festival, we have several activities that we organize through the year. And so the festival, which is basically our flagship event, the creative marketplace of Picnic, we introduced last year. Picnic innovation mashups, the city salons, which I mentioned, and the business club. I will just go through them really quickly. So this is a picture of the Picnic Festival in, I think it was 2009, in the old gas factory of Amsterdam. We always tend to use very strange, unconventional locations. The festival consists of lectures, obviously, but also I think 80% of the program consists of workshops and labs, so we do a lot of interactivity. The marketplace is an initiative that is sponsored by the Chamber of Commerce, and what they do basically is provide small starting companies with a platform to demonstrate their products and services and to present themselves to the outside world. And we work together with several financial institutions to also generate some investors, financial institutions that might be interested to invest in these young companies. Off Picnic is an initiative we started last year. Basically what we do is we bring Picnic into the city, so it is a public program. Up till now, Picnic was a purely 100% business festival, but we feel that the issues, that the topics that we address are getting more and more interesting for the general public as well. So this is something we want to pursue in the future. Then we have the innovation mashups. Those are smaller, more targeted events where we try to bring together creative companies and big businesses because we think that they can learn from each other. This is a picture of the Picnic Salon in New York. Well, I told you about that. And then we have the business club. I think this is my old presentation, by the way, but we have the business club, which is basically a member-based institution where people pay for the membership, and we organize 5 small events where we really try to match creative individuals with companies to stimulate innovation. So who are the people that come to Picnic? Basically, these are all people that care for the future, just to put it really shortly. And we do not focus on a specific industry, because we believe that if you want to solve big societal issues, big challenges, we will need everybody to chip in. So we focus on financial institutions, we focus on knowledge institutes, universities, schools, governments, you name it. Everybody that is interested in having a stake in the future, basically. And because we believe that we need all these people to solve problems in the world, we also use our community to co-create our activities. So we get them very closely involved with whatever we want to do, and they have a say in a contribution from a content point of view also. Picnic Festival, yeah, so we missed now the whole marketing stuff, but that's okay. A Picnic Festival welcomes between 4,500, 6,000 attendees, 36 nationalities, and here we have sort of a breakdown of the different people that we receive. And what we are very proud of is that we have a 50-50% female men division in our audience, so I think that's really good.
The two co-founders of Picnic Festival originally are women.
No. One woman and one man.
One woman.
Yeah.
Okay.
Although maybe Bas has some femininity in himself, but I'm not sure if he would appreciate that. So Picnic participants really look for inspiration and new ideas. That's the biggest thing that they are coming for, and but of course also business opportunities and partner opportunities, and we have been quite successful considering their feedback in those parts. We try to do that through content. Content is the most important thing, and we try to play around with formats, especially to bring in more interactivity. That's the most important thing. So recent themes, for instance, are urban futures, talking about urbanization, global urbanization, new ownership, about the trend from top down to bottom up. And this year we are going to talk about redefining growth. The other thing that we try to do is to offer an overall experience that is different than most of the events. And of course, because we had quite an interesting budget, we could also do that, spend some money on that, like this. Also inspiring for some people. Some of the speakers, well, there's a whole bunch of them, but I think what we are most proud of is that most of these speakers, when we invited them to come over to Picnic and speak, a lot of them were not so well known at the time as they are right now. So for instance, we had Bizstone from Twitter, and we had him in 2007 talking about Twitter, and it was really funny because we had a room full of people, like 700 people, and he said, "Who knows Twitter?" And were like 20 hands went into the air, and everybody was, "Oh, this is not going to work. It's sort of a SMS. It'll probably die down within a year or something." So it was. We are still proud of the fact that we had him at that time. Same goes for Stefan Sekmeister. Nobody knew him at the time. And John Underkoffler, for instance, as well. So, workshops, just a few to mention, just to give you an idea of what we do. We talk about do-it-yourself government. We have a program called Picnic Young, which is focused on shifts in education. We have sessions on design thinking, 3D printing. We talked a lot about collaborative platforms, etc. So this is what, for instance, a workshop could look like. We have the labs, which are really focused on experimental concept development. The Fairphone urban mining, which basically shows people what kind of stuff is in your phone and what is still reusable, for instance, what kind of metals are in there that we could reuse. The RFID Hackers Camp, we had those in 2006 till 2008. It was really fun. Hacking the Connect, we had that last year. So those are some of the ideas. This is also a lab that brings together old building techniques with modern technology. So the design was made in a 3D software program, and it was executed in a mud building, basically. Because we're talking basically about the economic added value for a city. So what are the concrete benefits for City of Amsterdam? I think there are numerous, but I just picked a few. Is of course increased publicity, and we checked with our questionnaires. 91% of our audience thinks that Picnic has added to the creative reputation of Amsterdam as a city. Of course, international visits, tourism, etc. Stimulation of innovation and entrepreneurship, in the sense of that we have been awarding 5 million euros in prize money over the last years to young entrepreneurs. Picnic has generated 9 million euros in sponsorships, ticket sales, and other kinds of income from the market. And that is in addition to this 5 million, and in addition to the subsidies. Another thing I think that also is a very concrete example is because Picnic used very unconventional locations for the events. We have seen those locations rise up in the city. So it's basically, we had an effect that accelerated the economic activity in those regions, which were usually a bit low economic regions in the city. So that's
for that, do you work very locally with all the eventually the actors of an area, for instance?
Yeah, what we try to do is, if we organize something in a certain region in the city, we try to get the community itself involved as well. So, for instance, we had in 2011 we held Picnic at the NDSM wharf, which is the old ship wharf of Amsterdam, and there is this whole artist community that is been hosted there in a sort of temporary artist city. So we worked with those artists to set up a pop-up city on the wharf, which was a huge project, and that helped these artists as well to show what they could do to the rest of the city, which was interesting. Yeah.
Right. What about the? Oh, you haven't finished.
No, I did. Basically, this is the NSM wharf, so that's basically a picture of.
Looks beautiful. Is it in Amsterdam? Exactly?
Yeah, it's in the northern part of Amsterdam. Northern part of Amsterdam. Yeah.
Right. Okay. So, what was the? I have just wonder, how did you convince the government to give you a lot of money, Kitty?
Well, I think that because it was a long process to convince the government. I think the founder, Marleen, one of the founders, Marleen Sticker, she walked around with this idea for 3 years, and nobody really took notice of it. And at a certain point, there was this piece of research that said basically that the creative industries in Amsterdam was such an economic success, was booming, and then suddenly the city of Amsterdam woke up and they said, well, but if it's such a huge industry, then we need to get to know these people. So how do we do that? And then they found out that it was really difficult to get to these people, because they were all over the city with all these small companies. So I think that was basically, they convinced themselves in a sense. Yeah.
As well as private partners, maybe. Is it the same? How do you say? The same way to convince a government, such as a private enterprise, for example?
No, well, in some ways there are similarities, but there are also very different stakes ahead. And I think that, especially for sponsors, it's very important, at least in the beginning, sponsors thought it was really interesting to be associated with creativity and innovation. So we convinced them that this was the place to be. To show what they were made of, basically, with the stuff that they were made of. So we had Vodafone, as a big sponsor years already. We had an organization like the Postcode Lottery, which was a bit of boring. They had a bit of a boring image, so they like to be involved with Picnic. By the way, they award every year 700,000 euros in prize money for the best green idea, which is kind of amazing. But also organizations like, for instance, Corio, which is one of Europe's biggest real estate investors, which is a completely different organization. We also had BMW as a sponsor, completely the other way around. So it's very, very diverse. Yeah.
Have you quantified the business opportunities for the city of Amsterdam?
Well, we tried, but what probably everybody knows that does these kinds of things is very difficult to quantify, because in a lot of cases people meet at an event, but it usually takes 1 or 2 years, and sometimes even 3 years, before actual results come out of that. So it's really difficult to track that. And so I must admit, we kind of given up. So we do have a few separate stories, individual stories, of which we know that were success stories that it came out of, followed from Picnic, but we don't really have a nice scorecard. With
so that means you've heard about deals, about business deals inside Picnic Festival?
Not so much inside Picnic Festival, but we do heard about deals that followed from the Picnic Festival. Okay. So where people met at Picnic and they exchanged ideas, and then 2 years later they started projects or whatever. Yeah.
Okay. Thank you, Kitty. Thank you for coming in here. Je vous propose maintenant d'accueillir, s'il est là, Stéphane Distinguin. Est-ce que Stéphane est arrivé, puisqu'il est arrivé de Paris tout à l'heure? Alors je vous demanderai de lever la main s'il est arrivé, sinon nous l'entendrons un peu plus tard. Il n'est pas arrivé, ce n'est pas un problème. Si, il est arrivé, d'accord. Stéphane Distinguin, pour rappeler qui est cette personne, ce troisième représentant un petit peu des grands festivals en Europe qui marchent bien. Il est président depuis quelque temps, depuis peu de temps, de Cap Digital, qui organise, qui est l'entité vraiment numérique, bonjour, qui organise Futur en scène. Bonjour Stéphane. On peut l'applaudir, allez, pour l'accueillir. Bienvenue.
Merci.
De Paris, donc,
de Paris
à Bordeaux. Bon voyage.
J'ai honte d'arriver en retard
pas de
par
problème.
rapport à des gens qui,
Vous êtes le bienvenu.
qui viennent de plus loin, mais je suis arrivé directement du train.
Bon, c'est
voilà.
Bien. Parlons justement de Futur en scène. Futur en scène est le festival numérique grand public qui se déroule à Paris depuis déjà plusieurs années. Faisons un petit point sur ce qu'est aujourd'hui Futur en scène en chiffres aujourd'hui.
Très bien. Alors, vous m'aviez demandé une présentation, j'ai une
Absolument,
présentation.
On va faire comme avec les autres.
C'est un peu linéaire, donc peut-être qu'on va faire autrement, peut-être que je vais vous répondre directement.
Absolument, faisons comme vous le souhaitez, autant interagir, pourquoi pas.
Alors, d'abord, rapidement, je vais vous dire qui on est. Donc, Cap Digital, on est un pôle de compétitivité. Et un pôle de compétitivité, comme son nom l'indique, c'est un cluster qui vise à réunir des acteurs de nature assez différente, des collectivités locales, des PME, des grandes entreprises, des académiques, des associations, de façon à développer ensemble des projets qui sont avant tout des projets de R&D, des projets alors avec une volonté nouvelle d'aller un petit peu plus vers l'aval et d'aller vers des produits, vers les marchés, et peut-être un petit peu moins vers la recherche et le développement. Et ce qu'on fait depuis 2006-2007, qui est la création des pôles, en sachant qu'on est le premier en termes de taille, en termes de nombre de PME, c'est justement de créer du foisonnement, de la réunion, de faire des projets. Ce dont on est rendu compte, en fait, c'est qu'il y a un gros enjeu pour une région, un écosystème. On parle beaucoup d'écosystème, aussi chanceux que l'écosystème parisien, francilien. C'est celui qu'on a énormément. Vous êtes bien passé chez French Web pour le savoir. Énormément de champions. Beaucoup de belles sociétés comme celles que vous voyez ici, qui sont pour certains des leaders européens, voire des leaders mondiaux, si on parle de covoiturage, d'Aldébaran, Moi, une des choses précédemment, je me suis occupé d'une association qui s'appelle le Silicon Sentier. C'est comme ça qu'on a monté des projets comme la cantine, le camping à Paris. Et ce qui m'avait beaucoup marqué en 2007, c'est qu'il y avait 2 startups qui étaient parmi les plus connus, qui étaient selon les blogs de référence américains, TechCrunch et autres, les 2 meilleures startups non américaines qui s'appelaient Dailymotion et NetVibes, qui étaient à 2 rues d'écart. Ces startups, elles étaient en fait donc françaises, parisiennes, dans le même quartier, dans le 2e arrondissement, dans le Sentier, à Paris, rue Renetta, rue du Sentier. Elles n'avaient jamais rien fait ensemble. Et je trouvais que c'était vraiment quelque chose de tout à fait dommage, parce qu'en fait, on a un vrai problème aujourd'hui, qui n'est pas tant de faire les choses, il reste encore des choses à faire, plus et mieux bien sûr, mais qui est aussi de faire savoir en fait ce qu'on fait. Et je pense que c'est un problème assez français, cette réticence, voire cette incapacité à faire du marketing.